Okay, this practice is it's a real self-study into repair mode, is what I like to call the beginning prep for the bridge pose. Um, I had a few yoga mala deep book readings I was going to show you these pictures, but I thought, well, let's do the practice, and then I could send those along in an email. So you're going to put your block flat next to the wall. There's so much prep to get your body set on this bolster that it's really important here that when you sit towards the edge of your bolster, that your feet are next to the block. So just put them onto the sides of the block so you have a wideness around your knees and a space of direction where the knees can actually kind of motion out. They don't have to squeeze in. Get a belt. Take that belt around. Now I'm going to step in. I had a little prep idea there. Let's take your belt around your legs, buckle up, and you want that belt connection to be at the very top zone of the legs. It could be somewhere that you would be able to unlatch it. And you might use your non-dominant arm side and just do that, just as a practice. Sometimes this would be a good time to do that. Some of your yoga poses, maybe not brushing your teeth, but yoga poses with belts is a good time to work on that. So when I sit on my bolster, I want to be able to let my feet flat against the wall when I lie back, and I want my lower tips of my shoulder blades on the bolster, but my shoulders are going to be on the floor. So when you have your sand nearby, when you lower down, you want to feel that much of your back is on that bolster. And as I lower back, I still have my feet on the floor. I'm going to slide my blankie in, so it's just a touchdown of softness. But I would rather be able to slide back on the floor than have to get back up on my bolster and push towards the wall. So it's better that you're too close to the wall for this one than too far back to start. Now, the only issue is that you want enough of your bolster under you and not lose some of that. So when you do step your feet to the wall, it's okay to maybe hold your belt so you don't lose that and push into the wall to lengthen both thighs. And then this way, that stamping into the wall with your feet is helpful. And the front of the hips have that open quality. So this whole area kind of dishes out into kind of a smooth polishing for the hip flexors. And that's the nice part about this type of bridge pose, is that you're kind of polishing some of the parts of this pose that are really challenging to do when you just push your hips up and down, right? In that kind of motor skill exercise of bridge pose. So after you figure this is a good fit for you, if it's not, you unfortunately might have to get back up and put your seat closer to the wall, or maybe push the bolster back. But once you feel that you're on the bolster, the belt should be tight, and you might feel some of your flesh kind of flow out of that belt. That's okay. And I'm going to tighten it up as much as I can without changing my footing at the wall, so it's secure. And then just add a sandbag on the top of the frontal hip bones. If you're eager to get your thigh flesh to flush out and you would rather have your sand lower, you can add a sandbag. But I like that if you could have that sand at the frontal hip bones, it's kind of an in-between parking spot for the sandbag, that you can eventually start to elongate that hip surface versus crunch into it. All right, let's come into this bridge pose. Arms open to cactus, hands straight back. And then as the rib cage is in that elevated shape, you're starting to work on the stability created by the props to enhance the circulation in that three-dimensional breath. Let your eyes find some clarity with closing. And if that fidgeting is a natural beginning for your practice shape right now, especially this pose can be one where you want to refine it a little more and a little more. It comes with continuing to practice, coming back to it, trying it again. And so as you push your feet, you also feel the arena of circulation in the front zone all the way up into the throat. So relax your chin, feel it kind of gently soften through into the throat. And when the arms have that dimension of open reality, you can nestle your emphasis into the heart space, into the belly space, and the dimensions of moving the breath in the ribs. So if I seem frozen on the screen, I am in a still position. I'm not animated at this moment. The only animated experience is likely going to be your concern for breathing slowly and deeply. And with this back bend, the breath is a little different with the tummy, right? It's a little dense, right? So your ability to puff up lessens, but the intensity of the inhale deepens. So with the exhalations, thinking, emptying the lungs and centering your body. And that's where we start to center our mind into the body. Pushing into the wall, elongating the front spine. Let's take a few moments here with an unequal ratio breathing. So the in-breath is shorter than the out-breath. Feel what's comfortable for you with the breath pace. When you push your feet to the wall, is it all the foot or is it some parts? Sometimes it's a little challenging to receive the wall with this pose when you're getting going to learn it. So it does take practice. Repetition helps you refine your alignment. Now let's either stay with this shape longer, it's up to you. If you're receiving some curiosity through your ribs and you like that fulfillment of a pose longer, you may. But with this being a class, I like to keep some continuation and going through the process. So any of these poses could be done on their own with one or two others. So we're going to add more now. So push your feet into the wall so much that you can feel your heels start to spring away from the wall. So there is a little bit of that density of pushing the bone frequency through the feet. So push, whether you actually feel you slide back a little bit or not. Okay? Sand away and start to move your feet from the block now to your bolster. And with that belt still on the legs, what we're going to work is our way into legs up. So the bolster is a little high set for most of us on this, on our spine. So what I'd prefer you to do is if your belt's too tight, you can loosen it a little bit. But if you're comfortable with the restriction, you'll set your feet just on the sides of the bolster at the floor, and then bring your hands to your bolster and push it a little forward towards the wall so that that bolster is significantly under the load of your whole pelvis, but it's not under any part of the shoulder blades any longer. So it does pack under the lumbar. Lift up your legs straight up. Okay. So this is a, classified a little more intermediate category with this whole bolster get up with the shifting in and out of these sets. So if you lift up and the back muscles are trying to acclimate to it, You might move your belt a little bit higher, a little higher by looking up at my feet to the mid leg, and get that belt on so it's fairly firm to the point you might dial into feeling a little different sensation as far as the circulation flow. Be sure the knees are separating and the feet are relaxing. They were recently pushing into a wall, so let the feet absorb and release and drain all the way through the legs. Take the hands together, interlace your fingers any which way. Push the palms to the ceiling. Now see if you can maintain this arm position. Now you wouldn't do this with your feet, right? It would maybe be possible if you did some of this exercise with your feet daily, but it's not going to happen with the connection of your ankles and so forth. So when we're here with the hands, I want you to flex your feet like you do with pushing your hands with their interlaced quality. So flex the feet, feel the bottoms. Well, don't feel the bottoms of your feet, but feel the flexing. Okay, and stay with the hands in this direction. That's the key. Relax the flex of the feet, of the hands. Unbuckle, okay? Come into a bound angle without the belt of bounding. You're going to go into Supta Baddha Konasana, cobbler. So as you're in reclining cobbler, the feet are together and the knees are open. Yeah, this is quite a bountiful cobbler pose, right? You can tell this lift of the whole hip, side body is influential into the circulation possibility. So when you feel your feet together, can you push them in? Can you feel the knees motion out? And if it's at all too much with the spine this high up, risen up from the ground, you can always put your feet besides the bolster, push the bolster far down, and then put your feet on top of the bolster without your back on it, on the bolster. So that's an option if this is too much inner thigh stretch. Interlace the fingers, push the hands back overhead, and then extend with the arms and the side waist. Feel where your feet are pushing, and maybe your feet slide a little forward on the bolster, but you have the knees in a position where they're motioning out, and the arch of the spine is almost not as relevant as maybe it's been in this pose in other times with the bolster under your spine all the way. So feeling the leg circulation, give it a few moments. Now I invite us all to try this without the bolster all the way through the spine. So as you relax the grip of your fingers, bring your knees to point up, and then as the feet are on the sides of the bolster floor, you're going to push the bolster all the way to that block so you can feel it stops. That's it, that's your maximum. So slide down so that your rear is right at the edge. You might have to move your blankie back. And then I want you just to feel for a moment. Let's take it just as a sampler. So the feet together, the knees out, if you haven't tried that. So does it feel less intense? And we're not going to repeat the one right before, so you have to kind of just get a reading here with that kind of work through the adductors, how it flushes. Now, when the knees come up, we're going to put the feet right besides the bolster floor, push up into bridge pose. So this is our classic, right? We generally have our feet besides, well, they're about hips distance apart. And this is about that, but we got the bolster on the inside instead of a block or a ball. And when you're lifting up, it's sort of tempting to slide the bolster under my pelvis to hold me or feel like it's easier. But I want you to work on reaching your hands together, interlace your fingers underneath. And since the bolster is so close, you won't likely be able to push that far downward, so your elbows are billowing out. So try to keep that clutch of the hands and feel the hips lifting up. So press down into your feet, feel the hips lifting, And as the thigh bands and the quads are working their range, the buttocks have to squeeze up, right? Right, those little pumpkins have to squeeze up. They definitely cannot relax very well if you keep that reinforced stability through the thigh bands. Now, when you move your hands apart, even though that wasn't a very disciplined part of the practice here, we move our arms besides us, palms open, and then lower the spine down. Ease the spine down completely. And then we're going to bring our knees in. This will be kind of a big change through. Move your bolster a little bit over, and we're going to roll up to sitting. Okay, so let's take our bolster off to the side. And I think for purposes on this one, this is a shift for a moment. It's just to slide your blanket from behind you where it's really low, a flat blanket. And I want you to take a seat on the blanket, cross the legs so that you're in reaching range to the wall. Right leg forward to left. Put a sandbag on the top of the right thigh. If you are feeling awkward with the balance right now of your legs, you could stuff in some blocks under each of them, but still have the cross-legged pattern and reach to the wall and try to work on that spine extension. So work on that length and that continuous press into your hands. Okay. I need to support my cat, so give me a second here. Okay. All right. So with the weight down into your sitting bones and the elongation through the back, it's different when you don't have as much height under your seat. But let's just be where it is right now. So with that reach of the arms, stay with the extended pattern out of the low back flesh and with the brain moving forward towards the wall. Does it feel different if you lean into the sensation so that it's not just about creasing at the hips, it's also about getting this kind of armpit flesh to manage the motion forwards. Okay. Now switch sides. So simple. Change the crossing, change the sand to the left leg. Now when you're motioning, it's ideal that you do receive some sensation through your hip. Right, we're going to be really processing 3 different channels of working with the hip today, and this is kind of phase 1. So it's simple, and it's not required that you use a block. If it doesn't feel useful, you're losing some intensity, you can remove them. I like to have that stability from my knees supported, but it is less stretch. That's for certain. So when you elongate through the back, inhale, feel the back ribs motion. And with exhale, leaning and process that length. Okay, so stay with this connection into your kind of your thick back ribs. Now when you lift up, so you have the motion of the spine climbing back up. I know it so wants to have some ability to receive sensation. So we're going there. We're going to slide the hands down. And I want you to take the sand off for a few and get a belt. And what we'll do is slide the blocks away and actually uncross the legs. You will likely want to move your blankie way back and maybe shake out the legs a little bit with the feet at the wall. So do a little bit of a shake, pushing your feet into the wall, and take that belt and move it behind and around like you do, like you do boat pose with the belt. Where's my belt buckle? Oh, it's on the other side. Okay. What we're going to do is a full extension of the leg program here. So So what I want you to practice is to place, which is placing and practicing the belt. So it's at your thick back ribs, kind of hold it like you don't want to lose this piece of clothing that you have on you. And your bolster's on the right side. Okay, and you're gonna lower down, so push into the wall, like you use that for your stomach control. Push into the wall when you guide down. Put that blanket just under your head, so it doesn't have to be a big support right now. It could be a very small piece of cloth that's under your head, so you get full spine stretch this way. Now we take our belt, and we're going to push our left foot into the wall and then lift up the right leg, step into the belt, and then tighten your belt down so it is very thick stretch through the leg. So I want you to tighten the belt where the belt is around your thick back ribs. It does feel as if the belt is as high as I can get it without feeling uncomfortable in the chest, okay? So this left leg can have a sandbag on it. I want you to stay with the emphasis of simplicity here, but encourage when the sand is on the left leg, the left foot is pushing into the wall or the base of your wall, whatever you have a board, or maybe your foot is a little bit up at the wall because it works better for you in your home. But with that right leg full, feel the thigh and notice if you tend to pull at the top of the knee or kind of suck up the quadricep. I want you just to let the leg just be resonating with the position. And then send your arms so they move straight back overhead. It might change the sensation with the belt in your back. Okay, so work with this belt, helping our shoulders get some traction as much as it helps our breath path and the leg sensation. Okay, so if that right leg is needing a little bit of softening through the knee, bend it. But if you can let your eyes maybe glide into a closing position and feel the sensation through the leg, the top leg, the root thigh, and then are there parts of your back that you can start to smoosh into the ground? Not necessarily smush, but feel the circulation through your back of your pelvis and the abdomen moving with the breath. It flows the back off of the floor with the breath. So each exhale gives you an opportunity to ground and repeat. This should be the name of a session, ground and repeat. Now with that right leg, as it's pushing up, okay, I want you to bring your arms down and get that right hand so it's going to kind of catch. It's like you use the actual piece of your hand and how it forms around your top right thigh. It holds on to it as if you're trying to rotate that thigh a little bit outwards, but you have to get a piece of the actual muscle flesh part to really encapsulate it. So your hand between your thumb and index, that webbing can be a nice hold to the top of the thigh. You don't have to get all the way into the grit of the arena of the connector that is kind of gritty. You can just get the piece of the leg and direct it towards the wall. Really feel that connection through that right thigh. The low back might be challenged right here. You might notice some back circulation change. Okay, and now you're going to bend that right knee and then take the sand off the left leg and bring your right and left arm open and cross that right leg to the left. So push into the belt, feel that pressure, I imagine, through the leg. Yeah, so the whole leg is a dynamic right? A dynamic kind of beam that radiates from the hip socket. The left foot doesn't have to stay pointing up. It might turn a little bit to the left and just dial it. And maybe letting it dial to the left is a really smart move for the body mechanics. There's a lot of babies. So pushing, only go as far as you can keep your right shoulder down. That's your limitation I find on this one. Okay, now come back up. Now feel the opposition with your foot pushing through the thread of the belt. But keep in mind, you might be progressing in your mind, like when's the next shape or whatever it might be in the brain, but stay with the energy. Even if we do less poses, that's okay. Feel that foot push and then switch legs. Left foot goes up. If you get a little bit kind of restricted because the band holding 2 feet is going to make you bend your knees, you might feel that position and just notice the knees bending, the connection into your back, as if this belt is kind of massaging your back a little bit. Kind of helpful to wiggle a little side to side with the belt. And of course, switch legs when you're ready. Feel if your footing at the right leg is, if it's a little farther away from the wall or if it feels about right, second side. This is where you can get some information about your differences in the left and right. So I add my sand when I'm feeling accomplished with my right foot at the wall. Might take me a few moments. Once the sand is set, I imagine you will feel your connection to the wall differently, right? So as you feel the foot push in both pads, right and left, then you start to feel the movement of the back of the pelvis. So this is where it can be nice to work with your visualization centers right in the brain, because sometimes that's going to light up places in your mind that aren't good, right? Good for the mental atmosphere and the brain cells. So, you know, if you were to do a one-legged balance, standing on a foot, lifting your leg towards the ceiling like this, you would arch your back, right, to keep that balance. So I want you to work a bit with that sensation versus gluing the back to the floor. Feel, and then as you bring your arms overhead, sense the ribs, sense the differences in connectivity. And as you experiment with isolating the leg with a little bit of bending or go into that straight leg, full body, let your mind and the weight of your brain, it's almost got its own spine on the back of that touches to your blanket. And as you feel into the source of support with the right foot, okay, I invite you to bring your left hand around the top of that left thigh and feel the thigh rotate out without the left foot turning out. That's a tricky one, isn't it? Like, oh, this upper rotation without my foot turning. Okay, I'm trying to keep it open, the circulation open on that top leg. Okay, so that's going to come from the back of the pelvis, really tacking into the floor. Okay, and then let that left leg go to the right. Your sand is going to maybe fall off on its own. And stretch your arms out. Right foot might turn out quickly, and it might be different on the second side with the foot at the wall. So one reason I'm working with this pattern today, I know it's kind of completely off of our normal radar of class experiences. And did your dog get up when you heard that? I wonder if George's dog woke up. We're from hearing his name. But as you cross that left leg, you might feel different with the foot. I find my right foot kind of tries to turn out. So you could go back to holding the hip with the left hand, feel that external rotation. That's kind of a trip because you take your leg right and it feels like it goes over and down, but you don't want this thigh to roll in towards the floor. You want it to turn open. So as we work in the next few moments with this position, I know we usually do this with the bolster under the knee, so it's a little more challenging here. So stay with that pattern, and I want you to experiment here in the next few moments. When you push into that left foot, let go of holding onto the hip for a few, and feel, breathe. And as you plug into that motion through that left leg, now as you turn your left foot so the leg is straight up, slide the right foot on the floor towards your seat. You get a feel of that left foot pushing up, pushing up. And then as we connect, what we're going to do is move the right foot so it's on the top of that left thigh. It's completely different, right? So I'll turn myself so that you might be able to have a little better exploration of it. I don't want you to have to get off your mat though like that. So my right foot now, making this belt a lot longer might be helpful for you to give yourself a little slack on it. But as that left foot is up, I'm reinforcing this reclined pigeon shape. Now my right knee doesn't have to move towards me or away. It could just stay where it's at with that. You can also put your foot a little lower on the leg, just below the knee. Well, how you look at it right now, it looks like it's above the knee, but you could put it viscerally below and feel that circulation in the inner thigh. But I want you to give it a try. If your foot can be a little bit higher, try that. Hold the belt with both hands. Okay. Flex that left foot. How could you not, I suppose? Okay. So I think we got the gist of that one. Okay. So it's a little different. Oh, isn't it not kind of a nice to have some fresh stuff to work with anyway? Even if it's odd and unusual, it's good. It's all the same stuff. It's just intermediate category. Changing the prop use. Now switch the foot up in the belt, right foot up, left foot. You have to use your hands. You have to use handling techniques to get there. It is preparation work for Padmasana, lotus pose. This is all prep work for that we're doing. But we're going to do a different level of that, right? We're doing the senior level, I think. That's kind of how I feel about it. I don't want to mess with my knee in those motions. This is enough of the movement for the joint to hydrate. Now, if your right foot is with belt, you might want to work with holding it. You might not like this handling of your belt, and you might want to be a little more loose with the arms. Let them be open, let them be back. And then take these final moments with the belt on your ribs to feel the belly move with breath, and then feel the ribs move with the breath. So you have more of a three-dimensional breathing focus, and feel the belt, right, around that rib cage at the back, the lungs and the back space. Give it a few. This is something to have a little memory cell about, this exact shape. And now when that left foot slides back up, we're going to take the belt off just to make it easy. And the hands can hold on to that belt as you reach back overhead. I like this kind of smush through my back. It kind of stretches my back flesh a little bit. Okay. So we're going to bring our arms so they slide out of the belt. The belt's going to be nearby. And as you grip the back of the legs, you can either roll to the side to come up or take a little bit of a rolling boat shape. So you'll come up. I don't know what a rolling boat is, but you roll through spine to come up, but the knees stay bending, right? So it's more of this folded Navasana shape. So feel the rib cage move forwards. And then as your feet lower to the floor, you're going to center your seat on a blanket. So we're going to use less height under our seat for this shape. So we're going to do a couple seated shapes again, and then we'll come around to a little bit of inversion through all fours. So I want you to place your seat up on a tiny little blanket height. If you could go low blanket, that would be nice. If your knees, when you come into the shape with the right foot at the wall, the left knee turning open, the left foot on the inside of the right leg. If this left knee is bouncing up here higher than your belly button, then you need your blanket higher. It's just pure and simple. It's just the way it goes. You need some height. So that's the way it goes. Let's say you don't need any height. You can do this without a blanket. It's okay. I'm usually giving myself more props. But what I like about the blanket height this way is that my leg doesn't really have any issues. It's just supported. And then as we, obviously, and then as we put our sand on that left thigh, we're going to go from the same shape we had on our back where we had the leg, it was crossed right a moment ago, but now the left foot is on the inside of the right leg. And I want you to let your rib cage feel its motion left, and then lean down and maybe take a block under your right elbow, besides your right leg to the back of your right leg, right? So it's, yeah, there you go. So it's right to the back area, besides the leg on the right. Yeah, if you have a belt, I see some might be wanting to look for a belt under the foot. You could use that, but take this so that your elbow, yep, and if that block is too high for some of you, you can always lower it down to the lowest height. And then send the left arm so it's behind you. And then when you're ready, stretch it up. And maybe you stay with the arm behind you the whole time. Okay? So that left arm has the potential to reach to the wall, doesn't it? That's the potential, is to get to the wall with the left hand. So if I go that directionally with my rib cage, I have the potential to actually start to challenge my upper spine. So if it's feeling naggy on your neck, then it would be best and most polite to have your arm either to the ceiling and then to bring it back behind you. Yeah. So yeah, you might tousle some of these ideas around when you explore the self-study of the pose. We're in it fine. Yeah, everyone looks good. Some of you I can't see, but I'm hoping you're taking care of yourself in the shape. So feel that right side waist. Yeah, that's the side that's getting squished. The organs have a little bit of juicing going on. They're in the juicer. Okay, turn your head to look down towards that right leg, even if you have your left arm over the side of your head. Okay. Now, as you start to bring your body up, so spine up, yeah, feel that change, just that little bit of movement up, and then reach the right hand to the left knee or above the knee to the leg. As you twist to the left, feel the rotation in the very lower chamber of your rib cage. And can you feel it with the left hand on the floor? If you want a block under your hand, it could be wise right now. Sometimes spidering the fingers and using that spidering quality can give you a little bit of kind of activation in the pose. So with that circulation, twisting to the left, breathe. Now, as you start to unwind and turn towards the wall, maybe let the right leg cross forward of the left shin and take just a moment to sit and feel. You can move your sand over or off the legs. Sometimes moving it to the right leg is nice here. And simply find the line of energy from your tailbone lengthening up into your brainstem. Just the connection of arching your spine. Okay, now we change sides. So we take the left foot to the wall, and I just simply turn my right knee open. So I suppose once you kind of elaborate on these shapes, and they get slower and a little bit higher density, internalizing, you might notice the very small subtleties of movement. So when I pivot, I'm still on my blanket. I have my sand on my right thigh, but I like the blanket. Sorry, not the blanket, the block. You know, another thing we've used on this before is our bolster on the leg, and some put blanket on the leg. So you want something likely under that left arm. So here's the idea that I have is the structure of the block, because it's defined. But as you come in, you choose. I like that because the side waist is fairly, it's kind of brick-like, even though it's got soft stuff there, it has sort of this tension in it sometimes. So smooth out your body to lean into the left thigh, and then you could either hold your right side, you could gently counterspin your waist towards the ceiling, and the right arm could possibly glide up and towards the wall. Now, pause on the goal-oriented part of you, right? So I find that having an end range is nice. Sometimes, we do have a wall there, but it's likely different from the right to the left side, isn't it? It just feels like a different complex in the rib cage sometimes. Not everybody has that, but you might feel that. So just know that there's nothing wrong with you with that. So when you come into the side range, feel the thick back ribs. Okay. You could bring your right arm behind you again. But stay with it for a little bit longer and try that connection of leaning into it. Okay, so this block could go lower. And if you're wondering, what would the blanket be like? Well, before we get out, I'll give you an awareness of it. You can put it on the leg, so it's really just feels like it's a bigger leg is what that would feel like, holding to your foot. Or you could roll it up, really have a nice rolled blanket next to your left rib cage, lean into it, and that's pretty good too. That feels great. So the props enhance the circulation. So let's start to come up. When you come up, you'll move your right hand behind you, your left hand to the right knee, and find that core turn. I guess it is like that. It's a kind of a quarter turn. It's a core quarter. So rotate your core quarters, and then feeling where does where are your discs hydrating on this one? This is about the circulation in the discs in a twist, imbibition. So push into your left foot, be a little cautious of hyperextending the knee, maybe a little micro bend, but rotate. Okay, this is all going to keep linking from one to the next. Okay, so feel how the waist is. I know we all are facing funky ways in our room, I'm sure. But when you turn, what I want you to do is move that sand off. We're not going to pause and sit looking at the wall this time. We're going to turn to pigeon. So the right knee is now facing away from the wall, and your left foot is straight back to the wall. Okay, so your bolster is off to the side yard, unless you want to sit on a bolster for this pigeon pose. You got it, yeah. You don't have to really, it's like your muscles are moving in the right direction, so your brain gets in the way. When you're moving in that set, it's like, oh, I'm going to think about it. Well, maybe don't think about it. Okay, so we take the bolster perhaps, and we put it under the elbows, or if you don't like that version, you could completely put your nose up at that too and do some other version. But we have our knee out, and I do like the idea of trying to get my foot a little farther up. I find that's a good idea for my hip. But for some, it just doesn't happen. You don't get your right foot farther up yet. So if I have a stop with my hands where it kind of pushes, then I lower down my elbows, and the top of the back leg is centered. spend some moments here. Just let the hip get that quench and that circulation, because I know it's thirsty. Thirsty hip. That would be a good name for a name of a sequence, Thirsty Hips. Maybe that'll be when it's really warm outside. Okay, so push into your left foot. And the wall is good for you now. It seems small, but it's important. Okay, so when we come out of this, we're going to do a little cat-cow or hands down or elbows down, but I want you to regulate the movement of the spine. So take the hands apart, off the bolster, arch, toes under, come back on the knees, and you might have to scoot your blankie back. And then when you round your back into a cat, you have your chin towards your chest. And when you arch your back, we know this sequence of movement. So come into cat-cow. If you want to go into dog pose just because it feels the right position in the moment, go for it. Okay, maybe you want to push back for a few seconds and feel the knees up and the chest through, and then come back down to cat-cow or cow-cat. Doesn't have to be cat first, it could be cow-cat. It's a cow-cat. Okay, now let's take pigeon on the second side. So we're going to switch through, right? So we've got the left knee forwards, the right foot back, and we take the bolster under the arms or the hands, or the connection is to elevate so that the rhythm in the back of the pelvis and the rib cage stays buoyant, right? So that's the purpose of a bolster, but not for everyone. Some people prefer no bolster, want to go a little lower, elbows down, a good option. But is the left foot able to move up? And the reason the bolster might be interesting is to get a little bit of a kind of survey the situation with your leg. And just kind of notice if the foot is able to scoot the leg, to make that leg a little farther up. So it's not necessarily parallel with the other side of your mat, but you're working towards those things perhaps. But the hips don't want to get too cattywampus, right? So you're going to stay with your right foot back, make sure the top of the thigh is lengthening down. And all those motions here with the regulation of breathing. And as you center in and soak up the circulation, give it a few moments. Feel the hip. And awareness of where you are in your practice right now, psychologically, especially since the sequence is a little bit bizarre today, but maybe stay with the curiosity of it. Where will this take me? Now, with it being a practice, right, it's kind of working through layers of the connective tissue, right, the awakening the pathways. So with the arch of the back, let's try to work with kind of this blend of, if you think of down dog, it's a blend of the arches, of everything in the body. So it's kind of like the universal, it's one of those universal poses we all know. And it's a little more accessible for most than like child's pose. So those are both common shapes we take. So when you do come back, I'd like you to try dog pose with a bolster under your head. And if you come back and let's say we do a practice and we're actually aiming for poses sometimes, not like the weave between. If you come back and you're on hands and knees, I like to have a blanket no matter what. You might put a block or a blanket on top of your bolster. This depends on how easeful it is for you to get your knees up and your head to the bolster, right? So when I stretch my heels back to the wall, let's say I have my heels up and my head down on the props, that's going to bring me closer to the bolster than if my heels are down on the base to the wall base, okay, or the floor, I mean. But as you do try this, remember, if it's too low for you and you don't want to aim for the prop with your forehead, that's okay. But feel when you have the actual connection to a prop with your head. We don't do a lot of that, like headstand kind of thing in this group. So have connection with the right towards the hairline is what you're trying to get to touch. Yeah, that's good. Right. So it's maybe for some going to feel like maybe you don't touch down. Okay. So it doesn't happen all the time that you're going to touch down. Eventually, dog pose is the head touches the floor, but that may be if you started that pose and never stopped it, starting at age, I don't know, 8 months or something. Okay, let's not compare too much. Now walk your hands back towards your feet, and I want you to scoot your feet away from the wall a little bit. And we're going to move the blanket. We're going to do tree pose. You'll see half of me, but we're going to do that in a moment. So I don't want your blanket on your mat so you don't trip on anything. But when you lean your sitting bones back to the wall, can you let your arms dangle? And you might be holding your elbows. You might be holding the backs of your legs. And also pushing into the wall can be an interesting arrangement of tactile sensations into your pose, because part of feeling your body is feeling your environment and its relationship to holding your body in space. That's pretty much it, isn't it? The reality of how you feel yourself. So stay with that energy when we come into this balance. Like, how do you feel your environment? So as you bend your knees and you let your hands either touch the wall, if you want this for security, that's fine. And then if you want your arms dangling and come up to standing, pretty good too. So come up, and I want you to face either, you're going to go left foot up first for your tree pose. So your right leg is either towards the wall, or maybe you don't want to be next to the wall. Maybe you want to be in the middle of the room or across the house, But what I want you to work with is your right foot is your base. And you're going to, remember that rotation, we kind of worked with the hand on the leg. Get a feel for this left thigh turning out, okay? And then feel that left foot lift up to the inside of the right leg, whether it's inside the knee, or if possible, you can get off of pushing your knee at all, anywhere around it. And maybe use the wall to help give you a little boost, and then get that left foot a little higher on the inner right leg. Now, this is generally a safe pose for most knees, this direction. It's not twisting the knee, but keeping the awareness of this punch of the foot into the right thigh can affect that right knee a bit. So I would recommend, like, you're trying to pull up the quadricep on the right thigh, you're trying to suck up the thigh. And then also the right buttock feels like it's getting pulled up, and then in the seam of your back, okay? And the hip seam to the back. Stretch your hands up. You can either take your hands together in front of the front body or overhead, the overhead body. Okay, the astral plane. Good. So feel where the spine is able to arch, right? It has a natural curve in this pose. Nice. Stabilize. Breathe. Can you feel the lateral motion of the ribs at all? And then as your hands maybe come back to the centering together, still it's a nice connection of the hands and the leg pattern together. And then when you shift away from the pose, bring the left foot down, take a chair pose. Don't sit in a chair, but in your own chair pose. So the knees are apart and the feet have their separation. And then try to load the thighs so you really feel the strength of the legs. Now, instead of tipping forward and pushing your weight into your knees and the front zone of the knees. I want you to feel like if you could stand up, straighten the legs, and then you're really trying to reach your seat back. So use your glutes to be a little bit careful of that arrangement of sensations, like you're really loading your legs. And then stand back up and bring your arms open and down and change the leg for tree pose. So you might turn your body so your arm is next to the wall. You might decide you're good where you're at, and then lift up that left leg or the right leg, and then place that foot to the inner left leg and feel this dynamic in this hip zone, right? We don't want them to be uneven, so we're levelizing our hips. So the curious part of this shape for me is that the pelvic base, the pelvic floor, there is a very subtle external rotation on both hips, right? So this footing is probably going to affect you, your base foot, and you might work with your knee lightly touching to a wall space, so you can kind of play with that. Maybe you change it so the knee touches to the wall and you have a little bit of a different balance. If I could just get to the wall. So perhaps there's different ways to work with the shape. You can also have your back to the wall. That's pretty good. Okay, and then you really can feel where your arches are in your back, especially your upper back. Spend the moments here with that breath. Hands are overhead or they're in front of the chest. Maybe your eyes can find a still point to gaze into, or if your back is at the wall, you can glide your eyelids to close. You can always change your shape. You don't have to stay exactly as we all are. It's kind of the freedom of home practice. It does have some discipline challenges, but stay with it a little bit. Now, when you do come out, if your arms are kind of freely ranging overhead, you're going to try to move your knee back in center and maybe your hands down towards the front of the chest. And then as you lower that leg down, feel both of your feet so your back is to the wall. And then bring your hands to your hips and step away from the wall so that when you actually take this forward fold, that your seat may touch the wall, but you can have support from the wall, not be pushed off of your balance. So when you lower down, you're going to conveniently stretch your hands down. And since our core zone, right from our hip up into the ribs, we're going to get into side sage in a few moments. So I want us to have this direction of reaching with our hands as far forward as you can, bend your knees, and then walk the hands forwards and the feet back. And take a moment with your knees. I imagine you need a blanket. I guess we got to arrange our blankets again. Blanket under the knees and take a position with either your blanket and bolster or just your bolster, and let your core be straight down on that, elbows on the floor. This is too much bulk. Okay. So you got to kind of figure that out. If you feel like you can't get your elbows down or feel the forearms, then blanket's too much. But not for everybody. So find what works for you. Feel how the elbows have their connectivity all the way into your hands. And then if your feet are close to the wall and touching, also reserve a few moments of feeling the toes hooked under and the feet pushing back. If the knees can drift off the ground, take them up. Press back into the heels. Breathe. Feel the arch of the spine. This is Sphinx pose, so there are arches through the spine. Okay, now if your back can kind of rock a little side to side, I want you to ease the back zone. And then as you lower the leg down through the knees, and then relax the glutes, the buttock muscles soften. We slide our hands back and we're coming into upward dog. And as we lift up our chest, we have our arms to straighten. So of course, elbows are different than knees as far as their extensions. But for some, it's a challenge, you know, with the hyperextension of arms. So if that's not an issue in that zone, you're going to work with trying to straighten them up, but also feel the chest zone forwards. Good, great. Look, encourage the position of the arch and its movement up into the ribs. Okay, now you can feel where the arch is to the spine. Okay, and now as we shift, we're going to come into simply push back to table and then slide your hands back and turn this bolster across, so horizontally across your mat. And then you're going to bring your elbow down and kind of slide to your side, left or right is fine. We'll let you go either side this one. But take your blankets and stack them both on the other side. Be far enough away from your wall that you're not going to get jammed onto the wall with your legs. And then take a couple moments to set up your blankets on the other side of the bolster, away from the wall, and a block beyond that. Okay, I'm getting too far away from things. And that's already long gone. Okay, so when you lean into your side, and it's any side right now. We got two sides. You gotta have a little collection of memory on what side you started with. That's about all you're going to be accountable for. And if you tend to use something on the inside of your knee, like a ball or a block, you add it, and you add your sand accordingly. Now, there's no sand requirements, right? And if putting that on as a labor, then don't. But when you do pattern your left knee bending, feels like we've done a lot already, geez. Okay, good. So you've got, some of you have the round bolster, which is really nice to keep remembering for the side sage as the preferred bolster. If you have that choice, shift around, find one. And as you have the circulation now possible in your neck, you might have your head centered. You might have it turning a little bit to the back of the skull. So let's say your neck can do that. You can actually turn a little bit so the back of your skull is maybe tipped a little bit on the blanket. This is going to be where we start to get some ease and stretch in our neck. It's kind of interesting. If you touch your neck with your left hand and kind of notice the tone, we're trying to use the prop so that it supports circulation in the neck. So there's no reason you have to turn your head. You could have your head relaxed on the blanket like you're going to sleep. But finding ways where you can try different circulation methods and let that right arm stretch over the side of your head. Feel the waist, lengthen the breath. And feel the weight of your left hip into the ground. So now as you feel how the side muscles are fairly elastic, right? The elasticity of the breathing muscles. You know, notice that you manage the stretch through your arm. I know this arm can get tired, so you don't have to keep it overhead if it's getting a little bit kind of wanked out in the shoulder. It could get a little too much, so you can always back off. But what we'll do is we'll take that shoulder, so we're going to widen through the pecs. So that will be when we come down with that right hand. Keep your block overhead though. And you're going to move your sand away from your side. Now, it's like sometimes you get a deep stretch and you move out, it's like you lose part of it when you try to get back. So continue this path. So I'm going to bring my right knee to my left. This is like an easier way for me to come up and around. When I put my hand on my bolster, you're going to turn. Now, even if you've got a round bolster, you can do this. I know it'll be a little intense. So you probably have to keep your knees bent to be with it. But I'm going to grab a block so I have this for comfort. So as you move back to the horizontal chest opener, George's favorite one. Okay. You could put your block underneath if you got a round bolster, so it's easier to roll back, right? So that's like it's less kind of punchy in the ribs. But if you don't want to use that block, it's just a deeper back bend, right? So if you can arrive into the shape and put the sand across the ribs, and no sand is required, but option, let the arm span feel that it actually can broaden the landscape of the chest, okay? If you can get your arms so that they feel like they're kind of holding the bolster, I mean, they're not completely holding the bolster, but it's like this lounging look, right? You have your arms, I mean, you can visualize this if you're sitting on a couch and you have your arms back, similar. Maybe you don't put that yourself in those patterns very often, but you have a visualization of that. So my feet are, and they're here. The wall is a little too close for me to straighten my legs. It's just not realistic. So I'm comfortable with my feet wide and my knees resting together. That's a good version. But then the toes have to turn in to complete the position. So we're carrying our circulation kind of peeling open in these final poses that are fairly lengthy in the terms of the work. But when you're going through the processing and absorbing of the shape, change the supports if they don't work for you. If this is not working for you, maybe you want to block under your pelvis, you can change it around. Maybe you want to push farther away from the wall and feel your feet push into the wall. That's fine. I just can't do that with my too close. Okay. So with the inhale slowly, and the exhale low in the belly. And as we start to come to the second side stage, when you're ready, you can roll right into it from here. You don't have to come up and sit up again, right? You can actually bring your knees apart and then bring your feet towards the left side of your space and then use that as momentum to go right. The sand's got to go for a moment, but as you shift your hips, remember the base of the floor below the bolster is important that you have that firm base under your hip. So then you can shift your leg back and you're in more of this kind of windshield wiper leg shape. Left arm is going over, but the right arm is between the two props of blankets and bolster. And then as you go into that side zone, good, we have that arm span reaching over. Yeah, and the patterns of the kind of the ripple effect, which we'll feel when we do our final pose. We're going to do legs up the wall. The next will be the final pose. But you want to sense all these paths, like the veins in the body, right? What's possible right now for your circulation potential? It's really basic. We're doing such basic science, right, for our bodies, but it's kind of the most kind of pure basic self-care stuff. So if anything's harsh on the knee or rubbing the joint the wrong way, whether it's knee or shoulder, this would be one you might have to change it up. You might have to bring your left arm to your right arm and let your head rest and sleep on your blankets. And you might be up for reaching your arm overhead and turning your head onto the back of the skull. So if possible, breathe with the ribs expanding. and relaxing. Using that concentrated breath to remove the stresses in the body, right? Use the commitment to concentrating on your breath. As you experiment with this range of the left arm, now as you start to turn to your right, you're going to rotate. And you want to find that you've equalized your side. So part of that is the ranges and opportunities you give your arm to move and then wriggle yourself out, left knee to right knee, sand goes away. And then roll into your right side. And as you come up to sitting, let's take our bolster next to the wall, right up to it, okay? And a blanket, one, okay? Now, as you sit on your bolster next to the wall, well, you're on the wall now, okay, you find that the sand is going to be supportive only if you want to use it. And when you do legs at the wall, the sandbag is not as critical as like in the middle of the room. It's still nice, but you're getting so much benefit from the legs at the wall. Some people don't want their feet pushed on. So I want you to get your sitting bones as close to the wall as you can when you swing the legs upside down. And then that upside downness is the key, right? It's like, even if you swing the feet a little off the wall and you kind of feel your seat closer, you might hold, if you've got some handles on your bolster, you could use a round bolster on this too. It's different. It's definitely it's kind of a journey to find the balance, but sometimes it's nice on the back muscles. In time when they kind of the muscles ease. I know this is the harsh way of getting that connective tissue to loosen. You've kind of put in that spot and you breathe through. But when you're centering and levelizing your hips right now, does it make sense for you to put sand on your feet? Does it feel already good? Do you want to add or change it? If it's pretty nice and you feel tingly in the feet and those things are good here, you could stay with this. And then you could also add some sand. Okay. So we'll be here for a good minute and a half. So I want you to kind of feel your way. I know you could be in this pose for many, many minutes if you prefer to stay. And through the end, that is completely fine. But feel where you are patiently awaiting the pose to start to take some of its effects. Right? It takes time. The patience is the biggest part of this one. So it's not going to happen instantly, right? It has a little bit of activation time in the body, right? Legs up, it just does. So starting to move the blood from the extremities to the organs takes a little time. So as the arms open, the elbows are heavy and the wrists are probably light, right? Your wrists don't really get too dense. It would be nice if we could get our wrists to release down, but they tend to hold the fingers in specific positions most of the day. So let your hands soften, curling, fingers feeling their space between. And then with your legs in this bold, kind of bolted position, the circulation begins. It began a while ago, but let the moments of balance in your hips also balance all the way up to the neck and to the brain. Eyes gliding to close. If you have an eye pillow and you want to center that over your eyes or anything that feels warm and soothing to add to your body. And breathe with the belly moving. and the spine centering. Soften around the neck, on the sides of your neck. Swallow to clear the throat. And with the face relaxed, can you let the belly truly soften and return back towards the spine? Strengthening the diaphragm. Calming the nervous system. Now, as you bend your knees, if your mind decides to stay with the pose longer, this is a good time to recommit and stay, or feel the knees bending and move the feet away from the wall. And as your knees bend and the feet are away from the wall, you're going to bring your hands up to get a hold of your sand and take that off. If you've got no sand, you got no worries, okay? Then you're going to bend your knees even further and roll to the side. And that ride shifts, right? So you come up and take a moment to just pay time to be patient in the collective, right, in the group. So we kind of arrive with that awareness of each other for these closing session moments. So feeling where there still is that commitment of community. So find a seat, let your hands lift up for the connection of the palms and the bowing down to our heart spaces, all of the hearts in the session together. Inhale, breathing and wellness. And with exhalations, bowing into your heart. Namaste.